So this guy was love bombing her, and at the same time, he was picking up my niece and taking my niece to movies or for overnights. And my niece started telling me that her father was hurting her. And she would come back from the movies and she would tell me that she was hurt. Uh, so now I had her telling me that both the grandfather and the father were hurting her. So I my anxiety was so high because I couldn't bring it up with my family. I couldn't bring it up with my sister. I couldn't tell anyone. It was just me hearing all of this. And to be honest, I didn't even think of, because my family had never been involved with social services or the police or anything. So I'd never even thought of going to the police or social services, really. I just was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, shall I go? The one day I literally drove to the grandfather's house to confront him, and his my niece's cousin came out the house with a little short top on, and this was like late at night because I was so stressed out. Honestly, when you believe a child is being hurt and they're reporting to you that they're being hurt, and uh, when you see the results of the bizarre behavior, you are going out of your mind. Like, there's no two ways about it. You want to stop it. You want to keep that child safe. So another thing my niece would do is she would never wear underwear. uh, and I would say to my sister, shouldn't she wear underwear? And she would sit there with her legs open, and I was like, it was, and my sister was like, no, she doesn't need to wear underwear if she doesn't want to. I don't know. To me, it would have been anyway. Minor details, I guess, but there was not a shadow of a doubt in my mind that these men were hurting her. And I wish I had all the notes, because then I could have told you exactly what my niece told me. But I can't recollect everything that she told me. I remember the behaviors more than I do what she told me. So it was an absolute nightmare. So by this stage, I had got a job in Dublin because I hadn't been working previous to that. And I got a job in Dublin. So I moved down to Dublin, and my niece would come and stay with me in Dublin. And, you know, just the one day she came to me and she was very distressed, extremely, extremely distressed. And she put a blanket over herself when I put her in the pram. And I would go and buy her food, and she would hide all the food under the blanket. I don't know if there's any explanation for that, but she was just extremely stressed, extremely fearful, extremely scared. She, everything, she wouldn't go into my house. She wouldn't do anything. She just wanted to stay in the pram, cover herself with a blanket, and she was hiding food in her blanket. And I asked her if she was okay, and she just said no. She was just like, no. And I didn't want to go into details because um, I just could see there was something wrong. There was something wrong, and she'd come from her grandfather or her father's house. I'm not sure. So I started stressing out in Dublin. You know, just if you could see the behavior, and I know a lot of moms can relate. You can see that this child is not normal. This child is not happy. They're not free. They're not playing. They're upset. They're distressed. They're acting abnormally to any other child. They're just not normal, natural, happy children, just eating normally, sleeping normally. They're, and yes, you can ignore it. Yes, you can explain it away if you want to. But I knew that there was an issue. So, of course, you're going to start thinking everything has to do with that issue. Any bizarre behavior, any, indicators, you're going to see that, you're going to believe that there's an issue. So, anyway, I started getting more and more stressed because I thought, now what I was trying to do, I was trying to go up to my sister's every weekend so that I could keep my niece. And it started getting exhausting because it's about a 2-hour drive, and I was catching the bus, and I was like, gosh, this is just getting too much, because I was working all week, and then I had to, then I would come up and try and look after my niece. And in hindsight, I wish I'd continued to do that. I wish I hadn't given up on that. So what I decided to do was, I'd spoken to some friends about it, and they said I had to report it. And I was really resisting reporting it because all I had was my word, and I knew that potentially couldn't have been enough. And it is a fearful thing to report something like this. It's nerve-wracking because you don't have 100% concrete evidence. So I didn't know what to do. And so I was getting more and more exhausted, coming up every weekend, trying in any way I possibly could to protect my niece. But anyway, so I think it was that weekend that I saw that she was so distressed, like she just wouldn't get up from her pram, just covering herself, hiding her food, just not telling me she's not happy and she's not well and stuff like that. And so I decided I'm not doing this anymore. And I knew my sister was having a big party for someone's birthday, and I didn't want the grandfather getting my niece. So I thought, I'm going to report this all. I'm going to report everything I know, and I'm going to leave it in the authorities' hands. And so I did. I phoned up and I said, look, I would like to report what I believe to be abuse. And I explained it to the guy, and he said, oh, there's not really enough to go on. And he said, does this guy, the grandfather, have a wife? And I said, yes, but she's very ill. She's in hospital a lot. And they don't really sleep together. And then he was like, oh, that could be an issue, that they don't sleep in the same bed. And I don't know, he thought that was an issue, and the fact that she was always sick and in hospital. So he took down my details, he took down the report, and because I was in Dublin, I don't know exactly what happened. Sorry, it's my cat. But what I do know is that the grandfather did still get my niece that weekend. They went ahead with the party, so I didn't manage to protect her at all. And I did see her after that, and she said that her and all the cousins had been at the house, and that he had put her head underwater. So so anyway, apparently, I don't know all the details, but apparently he did a lie detector test. And the only thing I can think of how he passed it is his wife being in hospital so much. He had tranquilizers. I don't know if he used tranquilizers to get through the lie detector test. And so the case was dropped. There was no evidence found. There was no issues found. So the case was dropped. So of course I was the absolute whatever, the horrible person who had done this. But my family, I think maybe about 6 months later, I started speaking to my family again, and we started seeing each other again. And they would let me see my niece, and now there was my nephew supervised with my family. And I started noticing my nephew was not 100%. But I don't like to go into it because my nephew does have autism. So everything that I say about my nephew is going to be explained away by the autism. So needless to say, I wish I could. And in my mind, before God, my nephew was extremely abused. And only God can reveal that because I can't, because of my nephew has autism. So only God knows, and God will reveal it in the end. And I have full confidence of that. So the one day my niece came over and she took me upstairs and she said, I want to show you something. So she was a lot older now and she didn't have underwear on, and she opened her legs and it honestly looked like a train had gone through her. It was it was just so bad. And I immediately ran downstairs and called my mother because I knew if my mother had seen what I saw, we would immediately know there was no two ways about it. So I called my mother, and my mother saw it, picked up my niece, took my niece to the car, and drove her back to my sister's. Didn't say a word, didn't say anything, made a huge deal of it, and made me feel like the scum of the earth when I was just trying to show her that a train had gone through my niece's private area. And this is another huge regret that I have. I didn't report it, and I will forever be guilty for not reporting it, because if they had examined my niece, there would have been no two ways that there was an issue. And I regret it to this. I don't even know why I didn't report it. I think it was just the fear of my family and the fear that, I would look like the bad one. I would look like, but I mean, when I think about it logically now, if they'd examined her, there would have been no question. There would have been no question. So I didn't report it. And I think it was just the backlash of my family, the way they treated me, the way they went on. And ashamedly, I went down to Dublin and I didn't see my family again for years. By that stage, my sister and this man had got engaged and they were going to get married. So I saw my niece briefly at some just before the wedding, because I wasn't going to attend the wedding to this family, and I don't think they would have wanted me there anyway, but I wasn't going to attend the wedding. Maybe I should have. But by that stage, I'm trying to think where I was at that stage, but I think I'd come up again, and I was working in the north again. So I know these details are a bit all over the place, but maybe I was still in Dublin. I could have still been in Dublin, but I know that I did get a job in the north after that again. No, by that stage I had been working in the north, but I decided to move to Gibraltar. So I got a job in Gibraltar and I moved there. And honestly, my biggest regret was leaving my job there and coming back here. I was offered a job back in Ireland, my old job back in Ireland, and my biggest, I was so torn about what to do. And again, it's been a pattern my whole life, is I'll leave my family and I'll come back again, and I'll leave my family and I'll come back. There's some kind of, I call it Stockholm syndrome, that keeps bringing me back to my family. I don't know if there's unresolved issues or what it is. It's just a bizarre behavior that I keep coming back. And so I decided to come back and try and reconcile with my family, which was the biggest mistake I've ever made, honestly, because that's when I met my son's father when I came back. And I'll start that on the next video, which was the beginning of my nightmare.